South Africa recently published a new rule that could let the government stop any crypto owner at the border, demand their private keys, and force them to sell all of their cryptocurrency to the national treasury. Yes, really. If they refuse to hand over their keys, they could face up to 5 years in prison. Payment for the crypto would be in South African rand at a price that the government sets. This is written in an official government publication called Government Gazette 7375, released on April 17th. Public has until June 10th to comment on it. Every crypto owner worldwide should pay attention to this, no matter where they live, because rules like this could soon become widespread. Today, we'll explain exactly what's in the draft rule, why this plan could be copied in any country with similar laws about moving money across borders, and what specific signs every crypto holder should look for in their own country over the next year. My name is Lewis, and you're watching the Coin Bureau. Now, until late last year, South Africa was on the naughty step. Financial Action Task Force, or FATF, an international body set up to combat money laundering and other such monetary misdemeanors, had placed the country on its so-called gray list, meaning it was subject to increased financial monitoring. Obviously, being on the gray list is not ideal, so South Africa was keen to play nice and get taken off of it as quickly as possible, which it managed to do in October of 2025. These proposed new crypto rules are a part of that process. But there's more to this process than just making nice with the FATF. And it begins with a court decision that most people outside South Africa ignored, but which sheds more light on why a country with millions of crypto owners, about 9 to 13% of the population, created one of the strictest financial control plans in the democratic world. In May of last year, a court ruled in the case of Standard Bank versus the South African Reserve Bank that the country's decades-old exchange control regulations, which are the laws governing money involving in and out of the country since 1961, simply don't apply to cryptocurrency. Technically, the judgment was right. Laws written before the internet, based on older financial systems, can't really control a borderless digital asset that didn't exist when the laws were made. But this ruling left a gap in the law. Suddenly, about 25 billion rand, about 1.5 billion USD, worth of crypto on local exchanges became invisible to the country's system for tracking money flow. And 5 months later, South Africa was officially removed from the FATF's gray list. This exit came with a catch, though. South Africa had to prove it had created a complete system for watching and controlling all financial flows, including digital assets. So, the new draft rule we are about to look at is the direct response to both problems, the legal gap created by the court and the need to meet international compliance standards. They combined these into one legal document. And this leads us to what the document actually says. The Draft Capital Flow Management Regulations 2026 changes how cryptocurrency is legally viewed. It reclassifies crypto as quote-unquote capital, putting it in the same legal group as gold and foreign currency reserves, instead of seeing it as property or a commodity. Any person holding crypto above a limit set by the Treasury must declare all their holdings within 30 days of the rule starting. And a government minister, not the law itself, has the full power to decide what that limit is. Furthermore, moving crypto out of the country without permission is made a crime. Penalties up to 1 million rand, or just over 60,000 USD, and up to 5 years in jail. Border officers are specifically given the power to search devices, hardware wallets, and crypto apps at any exit point. Authorities can demand private keys, PINs, and recovery passwords on the spot. Refusing to provide these is considered a separate crime. Now, you might think that the most damaging part of this is the border search, since it creates the most dramatic news and is, to be frank, pretty damn scary. However, that ignores the single rule that would hurt crypto holders' wealth the most, the forced sale clause. Under the draft, crypto holdings above the set limit can be taken by the National Treasury or authorized financial institutions at what the document calls market value paid out in rand. And there's a clear historical comparison here. In April 1933, President Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6102, which required American citizens to sell their gold to the Federal Reserve at the official rate of $20.67 per troy ounce. A few months later, the Gold Reserve Act of 1934 raised the official price to $35 an ounce, and this 69% increase handed the US Treasury an estimated $2.8 billion in profit, while every American who obeyed the order lost about 41% of their buying power overnight. Paying people in the local currency at a government-set price is the exact method used to transfer that wealth. For a South African holding Bitcoin specifically because they don't trust the long-term value of the rand, being paid in rand at a government-calculated price is not a fair payment. It is a way to take their wealth, dressed up in the language of fairness. Now, stories like this are moving quickly, and the time for public comments on this draft closes in a matter of weeks. So, if you want to track the South African situation in real time, along with FATF evaluations, government financial papers, and court rulings about money control in other countries, well, just come join us at the Coin Bureau Telegram channel. That's where we post breaking analysis the moment major regulatory news hits, share the on-chain data that we track, and flag the specific countries that we think are next before the news media catches up. It's completely free to join, and the link is in the description below. Or you could scan the QR code that should be on the screen right now. Now, back to it. Okay, so all of this sounds bad enough, but the forced sale rule is only half of the legal problem. The other half is the forced disclosure of private keys. And this turns the draft from a financial rule into a genuine civil liberties issue. Section 35 of the South African Constitution clearly protects the right against self-incrimination, the right to remain silent. Section 35(5) requires that any evidence gained in a way that violates the Bill of Rights must be thrown out. The government argues that a private key is like a document, and forcing someone to produce it is not giving testimony, similar to handing over a bank statement under a legal search warrant. The constitutional response, and the shared view among South African legal experts, is that this interpretation is completely wrong. Private key is not a document. It represents the information inside the holder's mind. Forcing its disclosure proves three things at once: that the holder knows the key, that the holder controls the wallet, and that the assets actually exist in the wallet. That is the textbook definition of testimonial evidence. International comparisons are helpful here. The United Kingdom's Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act, Part 3, allows authorities to force the release of decryption keys, with refusal punishable by up to 2 years in prison and 5 years for national security cases. But the United States has produced conflicting court decisions. The D.C. Circuit ruled in U.S. v. Brown that forcing even a thumbprint to unlock a phone violates the Fifth Amendment, because the act silently communicates knowledge of the device and control over its contents. That ruling almost perfectly fits the private key question. And under the important constitutional court ruling of First National Bank versus the Commissioner for SARS in 2002, which set up the modern property rights framework in South Africa, any seizure of property must not be random and must follow a reasonable, legally sound process, with a balance between public interest and the owner's interest. A broad government limit that automatically triggers a forced sale without a judge reviewing each case is exactly the kind of rule that case was written to prevent. And this brings us to the part of the story that should worry you, wherever you might be from, because, well, this draft isn't really just about South Africa. The legal trigger that created it, a court ruling showing that pre-internet laws for controlling money are not good enough for crypto, can happen in any country that still uses similar old legal systems. And that list is pretty long. The pressure that sped it up, FATF evaluations pushing for consistent digital asset oversight, applies to every member country without exception. Simply put, the plan being used in South Africa right now is the model that every other regulator can copy, change a bit, and use without having to write all the legal text themselves. The crypto industry has argued for years that decentralization makes this kind of regulation impossible. South Africa just published proof of the opposite. Farzim Nsani, the CEO of VALR, the country's largest crypto exchange, called the draft a step backwards that reminds him of economic controls from the apartheid era. Professor Stephen Sidley of the University of Johannesburg called it an alarming retreat from the country's goals of economic freedom. The Blockchain Association of South Africa has pointed out that the plan allows the government, not judges, to freeze assets, violating not just the rights to property and to remain silent, but also the right to fair administrative action. A court challenge is almost certain if this passed as written, but history shows that even if people win initial procedural victories, the government often comes back with a corrected legal document and achieves its goal eventually. So, if you hold crypto anywhere in the world, the implications are quite specific. The early warning signs to watch out for in your own country now include any court ruling that reveals gaps in your existing laws for controlling money movement, any new FATF evaluation or gray list listings, and any government paper that talks about managing the flow of capital for digital assets. The structural red flag is any attempt in law to reclassify cryptocurrency as quote-unquote capital instead of as quote-unquote property or a quote commodity. That single reclassification unlocks the entire set of control tools that you've just heard us describe. The minimum every aware crypto holder should now do includes knowing exactly which exchanges service your accounts, having a documented self-custody plan for any significant amount of crypto, knowing whether your seed phrase or recovery phrase is stored in a physical place that could be found by a normal investigation, and keeping a close watch on the regulatory consultation schedule in your home country over the next 18 months. The most effective way the government can enforce this is by targeting exchanges and on-ramps, the points where you buy crypto, rather than self-custody wallets. That is the lesson from Executive Order 6102, and it is the hidden strategy in the South African draft. So, the question this whole situation forces every crypto holder to face is no longer whether your government can do this. It is whether they will, when they will, and what you plan to do between now and then. So, will the South African draft be significantly changed through the consultation process and emerge as a fairer plan? Or are we watching the first official rollout of a global FATF-aligned template that will appear in one country after another over the next 2 years? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you want to understand exactly how the FATF quote-unquote travel rule and the broader OECD crypto asset reporting framework are being woven into the same global compliance architecture, well, then you could check out our full deep dive on that subject right over here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon. This is Lewis signing off.